Okay, I'm gonna make this one quick. You'd think a crime thriller called The Snowman wasn't doing itself any favors with a title like that, and you'd be totally right. Based on the best-selling novel, Michael Fassbender aims to track down a serial killer who detaches the limbs of his victims during winter for some inexplicable reason, and that's honestly it in terms of a story. There's a political scandal in there somewhere, but they forget about it by the third act, along with dozens of other plot threads, and there's no complexity to keep you engaged with any character you come across. It feels like a British made-for-TV movie or miniseries that wants to be Luther or Sherlock without any ingenuity or creativity, and at best I can only describe it as a poor man's attempt at making something akin to The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo or Zodiac, but again, without understanding what made these stories so intriguing. For a film that starts with a melodramatic and even weird setup, it manages to be completely unemotive, disengaged, and disorganized all at the same time. There's just no intensity or even anything remotely entertaining about it. It's a cold, stylistically barren slog, but in the eyes of those who don't mind those case of the week style detective shows, it's serviceable at best, but honestly calling it a neo-noir or detective story is a bit of a stretch given, little detective work ever actually happens. There are no clues or even suspicious characters to keep up the whodunit mystery, and when you do find out who it is, my only reaction was, eh. But Michael Fassbender must hold the film together, right? Well, no, he adds nothing to his shallow shell of a character who is an alcoholic but with no context as to why, probably because he's a lone wolf detective or something, but manages to spend most of the movie sleeping and staring into the void and still catch up with the killer in a contrived Deus Ex Machina heavy film. The killer's motive and choice of victim is ultimately very stupid in the context of the story, and Fassbender does even make a point of this, but I can't really divulge as to why without technically spoiling it, but to hell with it, I'm going to. Skip to here if you want to avoid a spoiler that's basically established at the start of the film. The killer murders the mother of the child who doesn't know their real father because the killer doesn't know his father, but then shouldn't he be going after the fathers? It's elaborately stupid either way. This is a very strange movie, and not in a charming Twin Peaks sort of way. There are a lot of quirks established to various characters, like a guy who paints his toenails randomly and the film feels a need to briefly call attention to this, and another character who steals evidence from crime scenes even though he's completely irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, but these quirks ultimately exist just to distract from their lifeless characterization. It's even worse that the film feels a need to introduce characters briefly just to axe them off with no consequences or development to the actual plot. It takes several long-winded turns to make it look like there's much more to the killer's plot than really all there is. They only find the killer because he literally tells Michael Fassbender where he is, like Kevin Spacey in Seven, except at least Seven does something with this. From a technical standpoint, it has bizarre editing choices, continuity errors, a timeline that makes no indication of random flashbacks, some ugly composition, and man, the constant use of green screens makes a lot of the matte painted backgrounds look flat and shallow, which is kind of visually reflective of what the film is as a whole. The Snowman is bad. It's tedious, forced, and absolutely soulless. I thought it would be mediocre at worst, but I really wasn't prepared to call this the worst viewing experience of the year for me. It's 2 hours of nothing, and it has the balls to try and set up a franchise with a completely forgettable and unlikable detective in a movie that thinks it's clever, but really seems totally lost in trying to tell what should be a clean, simple crime story. I'm out of here.